The spice trade begins. In the heart of the galactic nexus, the spaceport on Tinel Station hummed with activity. Traders from distant worlds, explorers and beings of every conceivable form shuffled through the crowded corridors, their boots clicking against the metallic floor. Stalls and kiosks offered an array of goods, shimmering fabrics, exotic creatures in suspended animation, and bioengineered enhancements for those with enough credits to spare. The air was thick with the scent of spices, strange perfumes, and the occasional whiff of more exotic aromas from the food stalls. Standing at the security checkpoint, Zanuck, a blue-skinned Sikran, his forearms flicking with a mixture of impatience and curiosity, eyed the small package in his hands. The label read HFY Biohazard, written in bold, dark letters across the top, accompanied by an elaborate warning symbol and an ever-present "handle with care" message. He glanced sideways at his companion, a human named David, who had shown him the strange wonders of Earth cuisine. David stood with a cool, almost indifferent expression, arms folded casually as he scanned the various cargo moving through the port. "So, your species eats food that's considered a biohazard on most planets?" Zanuck asked, his tone dripping with disbelief, his antennae twitching slightly. "Not everything, but the spices. They do have a way of lighting a fire," David replied, his lips curling into a mischievous grin. The human was wearing a simple yet efficient red jumpsuit, emblazoned with the insignia of the Intergalactic Spice Consortium, though the nondescript nature of the suit belied the fact that David was the only human in the entire station. A token human, as his species was referred to in intergalactic circles, but to Zanuck and his kind, that designation only added to the human's strange mystique. As they passed through the checkpoint, the security scanner's red light flashed, signaling that the small box containing the Earth spices had been flagged for further inspection. Zanuck rolled his compound eyes in exasperation, knowing this would be a drawn-out process. "We'll be fine. It's just spices, Zanuck. I promise it won't explode or anything," David reassured him, his voice steady. The Sikran stared at him with an intensity that would have unnerved most beings, but David had grown used to his alien companion's quirks. "You're not worried about the customs checks, are you?" Zanuck let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. "Worry? Not so much. I'm more concerned about the what-if scenarios. If these spices were really that bad, would you even know?" David's grin grew wider. "You're just jealous of the taste. Earth's spices have a certain kick to them, something the galaxy's never experienced before." Zanuck didn't respond, but his forearms flexed restlessly as the security officer, Adroxian, finally returned the package with a genuine look of hesitation. The officer's wide, multifaceted eyes glanced nervously at the label again. "Is there any danger?" the officer asked, speaking in his usual clipped, mechanical tones. David stepped forward, taking the package. "No more danger than your average hot pepper." His eyes twinkled as he added, "It's the mild stuff. I think you'll survive." Zanuck chuckled softly as they walked past the officer, moving out into the open expanse of the spaceport. A sizzling cacophony of sounds met their ears, the clatter of cargo being unloaded, the hum of engines charging, and voices speaking in dozens of languages David didn't understand. "So, where exactly are we headed?" Zanuck asked, looking around at the variety of food stalls offering a mix of fried meats, fermented vegetables, and oddly colored liquids. David smiled. "HFY, it's just around the corner. Trust me, you'll love it. It's Earth's answer to fast food. Familiar, yet out of this world." They weaved through the crowd, passing groups of Seraptid traders carrying bundles of cloth and Jotakian diplomats with ceremonial masks. The place was bustling, a true testament to the power of commerce and trade in the galaxy. As they turned a corner, a small, modest stall came into view, nestled between larger, more extravagant establishments. The sign above it read HFY in bright, flashing letters. A human man, middle-aged, wearing a stained apron that read "Spicy Earth Goods," stood at the grill, carefully tending to a pile of sizzling meat, and a row of glowing metal containers of various sauces lined the counter. David raised his hand in greeting. "G'day, mate." The man behind the counter looked up, a grin spreading across his face. Well, if it isn't David. What's the order today?" David leaned in, his voice lower now. "Got the goods, and a new friend to try them out on." "Ah, a new recruit, eh?" The man's gaze shifted to Zanuck, raising an eyebrow. "What's your species? I haven't seen you around before." "Sikran, from the surface of Tenal." Zanuck's voice was cool, his antennae twitching as he sized up the human stall. His eyes fell on the massive grill, which was belching out clouds of smoke and the unmistakable spicy scent of Earth's cooking. It was both overwhelming and intriguing. "Well, you're in for a treat. Earth fry isn't for the faint of heart," the human said, turning to the grill. He began to toss ingredients with flourishing movements, throwing them onto the hot surface with precision and flair. The air filled with the delicious smell of spices, oils, and sizzling meat, and Zanuck found himself involuntarily swallowing. The aroma was rich and spicy, but there was something more, a mysterious kick that made the Sikran's mouth water, even though he wasn't certain he should be excited about it. David stepped forward, handing over the Earth fry box containing the famous Earth spices, just the usual, mate. Extra garlic, light on the fire. The human took the box with a nod. Right. You sure? It's called Earth fry for a reason." Zanuck raised an eyebrow, casting David a sideways glance. "I'm starting to think Earth isn't just a place. It's a challenge." David smirked. "You have no idea." The human chef went to work, tossing ingredients onto the grill and flipping them with smooth, fluid motions. The sound of sizzling meat filled the air, punctuated by the occasional clink of utensils against the hot surface. In moments, the aroma of garlic, chili, and spices began to invade Zanuck's senses. It was so overwhelming that he almost forgot the social exchange happening around him. "This is what they call comfort food, right?" Zanuck asked, still eyeing the sizzling ingredients with curiosity. David chuckled. "Yep, it's an Earth classic. A little fire, a lot of flavor, and a whole lot of unexpected." And with that, they stood in the busy spaceport, amidst the whirl of the galaxy's hustle and bustle, waiting for Earth fry, ready to experience the spice in space, a taste of Earth's fire. Zanuck's senses buzzed with anticipation as he stood beside David, watching the sizzling ingredients on the grill, the fire flickering beneath the hot plate. The air was thick with the smell of spicy meat, pungent garlic, and a sharpness that made his senses stand on end. To his surprise, Zanuck found himself curious, eager even, about what this human food would taste like. Earth food, from what he had heard, was infamous across the galaxy for its unpredictable flavors and dangerous levels of spice, a substance often deemed hazardous by most species. But this was different. David's confident smirk and relaxed demeanor seemed to reassure him. Perhaps humans truly had mastered the art of flavor. Zanuck wasn't sure if that would be a blessing or a curse. Either way, this would be an experience. The human chef, who introduced himself as Mick, expertly spun and flipped the sizzling mixture on the grill with a spatula, tossing the ingredients with a flourish that seemed almost ritualistic. "Now this is what Earth calls a stir-fry," Mick said with a wink, his voice dripping with pride. "It's not just the food. It's about making sure the spice hits you just right." "Spice hits?" Zanuck asked, his antennae twitching as he tried to make sense of the human's words. David chuckled softly. "Yep, the spice can hit your senses, knock you out of your comfort zone, and leave you feeling alive in a way nothing else can. Earth's spices are a bit aggressive." Mick turned, sensing their curiosity, and held up a small container filled with a dark, thick liquid. "And this is the kicker. The sauce that brings it all together. The very soul of Earth fry." Be warned, though, it's not for the faint-hearted. Zanuck eyed the sauce cautiously, unsure whether he was intrigued or terrified. His kind had a highly developed sense of taste and smell, and though he was accustomed to spicy food, nothing quite like this had ever crossed his path. His people's cuisine involved delicate, balanced flavors, often derived from natural plant extracts and fermented creatures. Earth's cuisine, by comparison, seemed dangerously haphazard, a delightful and terrifying experiment in flavors and combinations. As Mick drizzled the dark sauce over the sizzling concoction, Zanuck's antennae twitched nervously. He had no idea what to expect. Would the heat overpower his senses? Would his body revolt against the harsh, unfamiliar spices? Or would he find himself enjoying this volatile human concoction more than he anticipated? David, completely at ease, gave him a reassuring smile. It's not too bad once you get used to it. You'll be fine. Earth is full of crazy things, but spice we can handle. You'll see. The food was finally plated in a large steaming box, a mixture of grilled meats, crisp vegetables, and a thick glaze of fiery sauce. Mick handed it over with a grin. Here you go, Earth Fry. No turning back now. Zanuck took the box in his arms, clumsy at first, unfamiliar with the way humans held their food. But he quickly adjusted. His long arms allowed him to cradle it close as he studied the contents, his compound eyes scanning the meal with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. You first, David said, gesturing to the steaming hot box with a laugh. I'll join you once you're brave enough. Zanuck raised one of his 4 hands and, with a careful motion, pulled off a piece of grilled meat, which seemed to be infused with the vibrant red sauce. His antennae twitched in discomfort as the spicy fumes hit him, but he stayed silent, focusing on the challenge ahead. He placed the piece of meat in his mouth, the heat immediately striking him like a wave. It was unlike anything he had ever tasted. Burning, sharp, yet oddly satisfying. His mandibles clicked in surprise, and he found himself chewing through the unexpected combination of heat and flavor. The spices were aggressive, yes, but they didn't overwhelm him. Instead, they woke up his senses in a way he couldn't have anticipated. As the heat spread through his body, a warmth began to build, and his mouth seemed to tingle with a strange buzzing sensation. Zanuck swallowed the bite and blinked, his wavelengths of perception in a momentary frenzy. I understand now, he muttered, his voice softer than before. This is a different kind of sensation. One that doesn't just burn, but awakens the body. David, having watched his companion's initial reaction with amusement, grabbed his own box and began to dig in. Exactly, he said, grinning. It's not just the heat, it's the rush of flavor that comes with it. Makes you feel alive, doesn't it? Zanuck nodded slowly, his antennae twitching as he processed the experience. The heat didn't just ignite his taste buds. It seemed to reach deeper, somewhere primal, awakening something in him that he didn't quite understand yet. It was as if the spice had unlocked something dormant within him, a connection to the chaos and beauty of Earth's sensory world. This spice, Zanuck said thoughtfully, it's not merely something you eat. It's a force, an experience. You've found a way to make flavor alive. David leaned back, savoring a bite of the Earth Fry. Yep, Earth food is all about extremes. You either love it or hate it, and some species can't even handle it. But for us, it's an essential part of life. As Zanuck tasted the rich flavors, the peppery heat, the undertones of garlic, and the sharp tang of something that could only be described as the taste of fire itself, he found himself amazed, not by the spice, necessarily, but by how a single bite could transport him. The food wasn't just nourishment, it was an expression of humanity's wild spirit. It was their adventurous nature, their ability to mix danger and delight in a way that only they could manage. Across the table, David continued to eat, his enjoyment almost effortless. The conversation between them had shifted, the usual banter now replaced by an unexpected appreciation for what Earth had offered. It was one of those rare moments when Zanuck truly realized that being human wasn't just about their boldness in war or their imperfection. Sometimes it was their unpredictability, the way they thrived on challenges, the way they spiced life. "I will admit," Zanuck said with a smirk, "I was wrong. This is certainly something." David raised his cup. "To spice and life, my friend." Zanuck looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "To spice and life." He took another bite, the spicy warmth crawling its way across his tongue. This was no longer just food. It was an experience, one that would stay with him long after the meal ended. And as the two of them sat there, in the heart of the bustling spaceport, they shared an unspoken bond. An understanding that despite the differences in species, this was the essence of humanity. The willingness to embrace the unknown, to take risks, and to turn even a simple meal into an unforgettable adventure. In a galaxy full of countless beings, there was one species, humanity, that dared to be as bold as their spices. And it was that boldness that would carry them through whatever awaited them next in the vast unknown of space. The fire of discovery. The station was alive with activity. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked in their allotted bays, and the hum of engines blended with the soft chatter of traders and travelers. Yet, in the quiet corner of the bustling marketplace where the HFY stall stood, it felt like a world apart. For a few moments, as Zanuck and David sat side by side, the cacophony of the station's hum became a distant murmur, fading away until the only sound that mattered was the sizzle of the grill and the shared silence between the two companions. Zanuck, his compound eyes blinking in a relaxed rhythm, leaned back against the warm walls of the stall. The spice had worked its magic. It wasn't just the warmth in his chest or the fire of the flavor that lingered on his tongue. It was the feeling of connection, of understanding that began to settle deep within him. The strange joy of having a meal that wasn't about survival, but about pleasure, about experience, was something he hadn't expected. The concept was as foreign to him as the humans' chaotic music or their exuberant art. And yet here he was, enjoying something for its own sake. "So you think this is the best Earth has to offer?" Zanuck asked, eyeing David as he finished his meal. His tone was less cautious now, more curious than anything. David chuckled, wiping his hands on a napkin. "Best? Nah, it's just one of the classics. There's a whole world of flavors back on Earth, trust me. And not all of them involve firing up your insides. But this is what people look for when they want something exciting." Zanuck flicked one of his antennae thoughtfully. "Exciting," he mused. "I've noticed that about you humans. Always searching for something that burns, something that pushes your boundaries. A species of dangerous beings." David raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Dangerous? You think we're dangerous because of a little spice?" Zanuck's eyes narrowed slightly, though not in anger, but rather in genuine curiosity. "No, it's not the spice alone. It's the way you all live, the way you approach things. Humanity, it thrives on uncertainty, on risk." David's smirk faded slightly as he tilted his head. "And what's wrong with that? You're Xikren. Don't you all take risks?" The question made Zanuck pause. He took another bite of his earth fry, the fire lingering in his mouth, and mulled over David's words. For the Xikren, risks were always calculated. Their people were logical, methodical. Every decision, every action, was weighed against potential gain and loss. There was no room for chaos in their way of life. And yet, as much as he understood the logic in their philosophy, something about David's words felt incomplete. Humans were indeed dangerous, but not in the way the galaxy had taught him. The dangerous part of humanity wasn't just in their unpredictability or impulsiveness. It was something deeper. Humans embraced their flaws, their weaknesses, their very imperfection. It made them stronger, somehow, more alive. "I think," Zanuck began, choosing his words carefully, "it's not the risks themselves that are dangerous. It's the willingness to take them, even when you don't know what comes next. David sat back and gave a thoughtful nod. You're getting it. That's what makes humans dangerous. We never stop moving forward, even when we don't know if there's a cliff in front of us. We make mistakes, we fall, but we get back up. And in the end, that's what makes us so hard to predict. Zanek's antennae twitched in silent contemplation. He had always been taught that predictability was the key to survival. The more you understood about your environment and your enemies, the less danger there was. Yet here was David, a human, explaining how the unknown, the unpredictable, was a form of strength. The conversation paused as the grill continued to hum softly in the background, the sizzling sounds of sizzling food a reminder of the simple joys of this strange moment. Zanek was beginning to see the human experience in a new light. You mentioned risks, Zanek said after a while, his voice almost soft with the weight of his thoughts. Do humans ever regret the risks they take, or is it always about the thrill of moving forward? David leaned back and looked up at the ceiling, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I guess it depends on the person. Some humans regret things, sure. But most of us, we don't regret what we do. Not really. We regret what we didn't do. That response struck Zanek like a wave. The idea that regret wasn't a matter of failure, but of inaction, of not pushing hard enough. It was a philosophy that ran entirely counter to the Tsikran's ways. To his people, regret was a powerful tool, a necessary one for growth. It was a reminder to avoid the paths that led to failure, to plan and strategize better for the future. But humans, they regretted doing too little rather than too much. Zanek found himself fascinated by the implications. What would it be like to live without the constant pull of calculated safety, where every decision didn't carry the weight of risk management? What would it be like to live in a world where action took precedence over inertia? I don't know if I could live that way, Zanek confessed, the words slipping out before he could stop them. It seems reckless, dangerous. But, at the same time, it feels. He paused. The words were difficult, like trying to put together pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. Alive. It feels like life is happening, even in the chaos. David gave him a smile, that familiar, confident smile that Zanek had seen so often over the course of their journey. Exactly. That's what makes life worth living. Not knowing everything, not being in control all the time. It's the adventure, the challenge. Without it, we might as well be dead. Zanek stared at him, slowly beginning to comprehend. This human philosophy, this way of being, was unlike anything he had encountered before. For David, life was defined by the willingness to face the unknown, to jump headfirst into challenges, and to embrace the danger of it all. And yet, amidst the peril and chaos, there was something deeper, a kind of resilience that ran through humanity, a drive to face the next obstacle head-on, regardless of what had happened before. Humans didn't run from danger. They thrived in it. The Tsikran took another deep breath, his body settling into the strange new sensation of uncertainty. Maybe that was the lesson in all this. Perhaps it wasn't about planning every move, avoiding every risk, or staying in control. Maybe it was about embracing the unexpected, the fire of life, and meeting it with a courage that didn't always have answers, but was ready to face the journey anyway. As the stall's grill sizzled behind him, Zanek reached for another bite of earth fry. The spiced fire lit up his mouth once again, but this time, he didn't shy away from it. He embraced it. He was learning, slowly but surely, to live like the humans. And in that moment, Zanek realized that maybe, just maybe, the unknown was where the true fire of existence burned brightest.